The Roman commander wanted to campaign against Arminius further, but he was unsure about the morale of his soldiers. He was soon reassured when the taunting of a Germanic warrior was replied by the legionaries angrily jeering and shouting back that they would take their lands and wives as spoils of war. Confident in the high spirits of his soldiers, Germanicus marched out once again to engage the enemy on the plain of Edista Viso. His army consisted of Gallic and Germanic auxiliaries, as well as foot archers in the vanguard. 4 imperial legions were behind them, followed by Germanicus himself, accompanied by 2 praetorian cohorts and some hand-picked cavalry. Next came 4 more Roman legions, lightly armed troops, some horse archers, and the remaining allied cohorts. Arminius's Angravarii and Cherusci infantry forces began on a hill slope and charged viciously down at the Roman front line to open the battle. Seeing the Germanic infantry making their charge, Germanicus ordered the cavalry under Stertinius to attack Arminius's flank and rear, holding his infantry back for the time being. He waited until the cavalry made contact, and then ordered his auxiliaries and the first 4 legions to advance at the charging Germanic infantry. As the legionaries threw their 2 pila, the enemy began to immediately suffer casualties, and they eventually started to flee. However, Arminius himself, along with the second line of Germanic warriors, charged towards the exposed Roman archers, which were then reinforced by the allied cohorts. Gradually, the tide of battle turned against the Germans, and they, as they had done to the Romans 7 years earlier, were utterly slaughtered. No prisoners were taken, while Arminius escaped. After his victory, Germanicus constructed a victory monument, and this angered the Germans enough to fight once again. Arminius and the tribal war council decided to retreat to Angravarii land to prepare for the next battle. The warriors of this land erected an earthwork barricade between a swamp and a forest, with Arminius wishing to draw the Romans into attacking the barrier, while the Cherusci cavalry and infantry laid in ambush. However, Germanicus's scouts had seen the Germans constructing their defensive fortification, and he developed a counter-strategy. He drew up his army in front of the barricade, with himself commanding the battle group assaulting the more difficult terrain on the right flank, accompanied by the Praetorian cohorts. Meanwhile, Seius Tubero commanded the left flank on more level ground. The battle opened when the left battle group attacked the wall, facing difficulty and drawing Germanic reinforcements to them. At the same time, the Roman cavalry on the right engaged the Germanic forces in the forest, who Germanicus knew were there. Nevertheless, they still suffered losses. In order to soften the enemy up, the Roman archers, slingers, and artillery rained down missiles on the wall. Germanicus decided this was the moment, and he led his Praetorian cohorts forward up the slope toward the barrier. After some brutal combat, this elite formation managed to break through the barrier and then swung right, attacking the Cherusci forces from the rear. In this brutal fighting, Germanicus himself slew many enemies, inspiring his soldiers to victory. After hours of intense fighting, the Romans drove the enemy from the battlefield, and the remaining Germanic leaders fled. The Roman psychological wounds from the Teutoburg disaster had been avenged, but Tiberius decided that conquering Germania was not worth the cost, and recalled Germanicus to Rome, where he again was awarded a triumph